All right, so yeah, as Kevin pointed out from Improving, I've actually only been there since October, but I've been in the industry for 7 years, coming up on 7 years. It's been mainly .NET and actually more full stack before full stack became a term. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here. This is actually my first time doing anything like this, but I'm very passionate of teaching and doing things like that, and I'm glad to have this opportunity. So hopefully this isn't going to be too dry for you guys. I did my best to make it, a little exciting somehow. But all right. Okay, so today we're just going to talk about all these topics. First, I'd like to give you guys an idea of what .NET is and what it means. And then we're going to go over Visual Studio. I'm going to walk you guys through some of the high points and the things that I believe a .NET developer would need to know to be successful. And then we're going to look into, I'm going to show you guys the syntax, the C# syntax. C# is the most popular language that's being used right now, but there's others. We'll talk about that as well that's on the .NET framework. We're going to create our first MVC project, and that should be our stopping point today. And then tomorrow we'll come back and finish out creating a Web API project, and I'll show you guys a little bit of how to debug in Visual Studio. And I think we will be able to get to deployment hosting, and just a little foresight, we're going to be doing that in Azure. So what is .NET? So .NET is a framework that supports multiple different languages, and like I mentioned, C# is the most popular, F# is gaining popularity, and VB.NET is usually a good introductory to .NET if you're new to development. C++ is another one, but I don't see too many people using that in the industry. So what can you do with .NET? You can build console apps like the command prompts that come up and the black screen and the text, plain text. You can do that. You create web apps, web services to feed clients and consumers. Windows Forms. Windows Forms would be like an app native to Windows that you're not running on the web. And then just a class library. And what a class library is, it gives you the ability to share a set of code packaged into one package that you can share across multiple projects or applications that you might be using. Like you have a common framework or a common library for your organization that anybody making a .NET application would use. There's so many different things you can do. That's kind of like the high level. So how does it work? Well, first there is a thing called the Common Language Runtime, and this is essentially the core of .NET that's responsible for executing your code, memory management, thread management, and there's thread or type safety and security. There's another piece of it that is called intermediate language, and this is essentially when you are writing your code and then you build it, it outputs what we call an assembly, and I'll get to that. And that assembly contains intermediate language, and this is a common high-level language that is shared across all the different programming languages that are supported by .NET. And this thing called a just-in-time compiler, and this resides on the CLR, and it literally during runtime, so when your application is running, it will execute or compile the your IL, your intermediate language, into machine code, so that it can run essentially. And what that really means is that the machine code is down to binary with your operating system. That's essentially what that means. So what does that look like? I want to give you guys a picture so you guys can maybe help understand it a little bit better. So you start with your source code, and then you compile it, and then it spits out the code. It runs on the CLR, the JIT, people call it JIT or jitter, you'll hear. Compiles it to machine code, which runs on the operating system. Pretty simple. And then there's this concept of unmanaged code or unmanaged components. And what the critical path the top to bottom, is most cases, whereas an unmanaged component is something that does not run on a CLR. And the way that works is that part of that unmanaged component has a process that will run an instance or a piece of a CLR so that it can execute managed code. It's kind of a weird thing. Before I move on, I kind of threw a lot of stuff at you guys. I want to give you guys a second to ask questions if you have any.
In what circumstances is unmanaged code used or written? Just maybe like a basic example.
So a good example of that is most of the web applications that you write. So IIS is Internet Information Services, which is, it does not have a CLR for itself. So, but it hosts your application, which is what the web app is ASP.NET. It's another part of the .NET framework, which has runs your instance of the CLR. So a good example of that is all the web applications that you write that are hosted in the web. So, any other questions? Does that kind of answer your question?
I might have to connect with you later.
Okay.
A better, more clear. That's
Okay.
probably like a 30,000.
Yeah, I'm given 30,000 foot in level right now. It's when you first start in .NET, it's not something you really have to be too concerned with, to be honest. But it's something as you progress in your career that it's good to know. Because CLR gives you a lot of benefits with the thread management, your memory management, garbage collection, which I'm about to touch on, that helps to make sure that your program is running as smooth and as effective and fast as possible. So, an assembly is, I kind of already hit on this, is that once your code is compiled, it spits out a DLL or an executable file. You guys have all seen these before, like at least a .exe file, I'd imagine. That is also known as an assembly, and that contains the intermediate language, the IL code. So the next thing that you should know is that the global assembly cache. And essentially what this is all the shared libraries that Microsoft has provided for you to use while you're building applications. And it's located in a certain spot on Windows. No.
Sorry. Don't worry about it.
Oh, no problem. We'll kind of touch on the global assembly cache once we dive into Visual Studio. Garbage collection, this is just the automatic memory management that ensures that your application does not have any, that is running at its rate or speed or whatever you want to say. Without this, you would have to manage your own, like when you create a variable, you'd have to when you create a variable, you're allocating memory for that variable, and then without garbage collection, you would have to be responsible for unallocating that and giving it back to your memory. So I've already kind of touched on the managed code a little bit and the unmanaged code. Let's go to show you another little cool diagram. So this is the .NET architecture at a high level. So you guys have probably already seen this graphic before. Copyright purposes, I kind of built my own so I can put it in the slide. But .NET is transforming. You guys have heard of .NET Core. We've already talked about it. So with that, there's been some new things that have been added to the .NET architecture to be more cross-platform friendly, to keep up with market. So we are here to talk about more of the .NET framework, which is going to be your Windows Forms, ASP.NET. .NET Core is this new concept, fairly new concept that allows you to build web apps that can run on Linux machines instead of Windows machines. And then you also have Xamarin. Xamarin allows you to use C# to write native applications such as iOS, Android, and even OS X Mac applications. And then all three of these are called, all three of these runtimes is what these are called, utilize the .NET Standard Library. I don't know why I'm pointing at my screen. You guys can't see what I'm doing. the .NET Standard Library, which is basically it's a bunch of shared libraries for all of the runtime pieces of .NET right now. So, and then all that sits on top of a common infrastructure. That what that means is like your IDE, all your different languages, and your runtime components. All right. Let's take a look at Visual Studio. So these are the points that I'd like to touch on Visual Studio, and actually I'm going to transition to Visual Studio so you guys can kind of follow along. Let's see here. Project templates, let me get package manager. Wait, I have it over here, yes. I don't know how well this is going to work. I might need to change my display settings real quick, guys. All right, can you guys see that okay? It looks kind of... I use a dark theme. I guess I could change it to the light theme if that would look better.
The light theme usually comes across a little bit better.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's someday either.
The zoom too?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a little better, guys? Should be able to switch to the light theme real quick.
It's the very top right there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Whew. Is that better, guys?
Yeah.
Awesome. My eyes are already burning. No. All right, let me close this solution. So, if you guys want to follow along, feel free. I'm going to probably switch back and forth. I hope this doesn't bother you, so I can remember exactly what I'm going to show you guys. So I'd like to show you guys the project templates, NuGet package manager, extensions and updates, some options that you can do and tools that will be helpful for when you guys start writing your own applications. Solution Explorer, find, and editor. All right. So if you're following along, go ahead and bring up Visual Studio. Give you guys a second to do that. Visual Studio is probably, arguably, one of the best development environments out there to use. It's super feature-rich, and it does a lot of cool things. It makes it a lot easier to do your development. So, if you go to File, New, and then go to Project, it's really straightforward. It's how you create a new project, and what's really nice is that Visual Studio Microsoft has these templates to basically set up a base for whenever you build an application. And we're going to primarily focus on the C#, but there you can see there's so many different templates that you can use. And then when you drill down into these, it gives you even more categories, such as like Windows. Windows is going to be like your Forms application, like I was mentioning earlier, all the way to like your class library that you can create like a shared some shared code essentially, and then go across projects and things. Web, you have your .NET Framework, .NET Core, and then ASP.NET Core with .NET Framework. So it's really these are really nice. Really a nice feature. I don't know if any other IDEs have something like this. I'd imagine so because they're so helpful. But let's go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and just create a class library. And you'll see down here you can control the name. My first class library. And then down here you can choose where you want to save it. And then you could even change the solution name to something else. Usually you wouldn't do something like that, but I mean, just wanted to show you the flexibility of it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. All right. So we're going to talk about NuGet Package Manager real quick. So you can see that this just built a, this is not a good example. I'm going to close this out real quick and apologize, guys. Just the class libraries are so bare. There's not a lot of stuff I can really point out for you guys. So this actually kind of shows. It's nice that it shows you some more features within this the templating. So I'm just going to choose. I'm going to gloss over this because once we get to the actually building an MVC project, we can talk more about it. Just really want to show you guys. Yeah, go ahead.
How'd you get there? Or how'd you get to that specific template?
Oh, sorry. So if you go back to File, New, and then Project, and then you can click on, I kind of moved fast on that, Web, ASP not Web, Application, and then hit OK, then hit OK again. What do you see in front of you? Click on the MVC. Yeah. Cool. All right, sorry about that, guys. Did not build it. Where's my project? Okay, so yeah, the reason I wanted to change on you guys is because this kind of gives you a better perspective of what the templates give you. It really spits out a lot of stuff for you. It sets up your application and kind of help you with speed of development and things like that. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to kind of do this stuff out of order, but just what makes sense. Is that first one of the major things that you'll use a lot is this Solution Explorer over here. And this essentially is giving you the view of your everything that your application is made of. And you'll see that it's broken down into a solution. And then below that, this is called a project. And a solution can contain multiple projects. So I could throw another project in here, like a class library if I wanted to, by just going to right-click on the solution level. And then I go Add, New Project. And then we'll go back to the Windows, and let's add that class library I didn't want to add. There you go. So you can see that I've worked on projects that I've had 30 plus projects within one solution. So that's not an uncommon thing to do. So with that, since we created that class library, I want to show you guys how I can reference that class library. So if you if you look at your web application and then you see the references section, if we expand that, you're going to see a lot of different things in there that make it, and what these are the shared libraries and from the global assembly cache that I was talking about earlier that help your project run. Actually, they're necessary for your project to run. So we right-click on References, Add Reference, and then you'll have quite a few options in here. You can see all the stuff that's in the global assembly cache by going to Assemblies and Framework. So we can check any of these. We can search for them.
Would it be safe to say references is kind of equivalent to dependencies?
It's exactly true. Yes, that's a good way to look at it. System.configuration. So you can search. It's gotten a lot better than it used to be in previous Visual Studio instances. So, but what I want to show you guys is how to reference another project, because I've actually worked with people who they've developed in .NET, but this is something that they never really knew, is that you can actually reference other projects within your solution. So, class library. Click on that. Now, if we look in here, it's going to be class library 1. You see it's referenced now. Yeah, go ahead.
To reference the other project, does it have to be in the same solution?
No, it does not. So that's another concept that you do. you usually do not want to do that because if something well, it depends on your needs. I'm not gonna sit here and say you usually wouldn't do it or you would do it, because there's benefits to doing it either way. And yeah, you could do that really easy by just right clicking and then going to add existing project, and then I can search for my other projects in here. Console application. Right, no, we wouldn't want to do that. What it's looking for is a CS proj file. This is the project file when you create a C# project. So, and you'll see this, it puts it in here. But let's say, kind of extending off of what you just said, so this actually brings it into your solution. But if you make changes to this, like let's say I open up that other project that we just grabbed this CS proj from, it'll reflect here. But let's say we have an instance where we don't want any, if there's changes, we want to do some type of versioning. Like I haven't talked about NuGet Package Manager yet, but that, it could be a package that that you want to reference. So if there are changes to it, you are in control of either accepting those changes or not, so it doesn't break your application. The way I just did it now will break your application if a change was made externally, because this is still an external project to this solution. It's just referencing it. But we can also reference just the DLL by doing the exact same process. Let's go. But you wouldn't be adding a project. You'd be actually adding a reference. So we can go add reference, and then we can go to browse. And then for some reason you have to hit browse again. And then let's go to projects. Okay, so I got to pause there for a second, because this is something that is kind of crucial for you guys to understand, is that this bin folder here is kind of like, it is the heart of your application. This is where all your references go when you compile, and this is what runs your application. So the reason I'm going here is so I can find the Azure. Let's see if I can make this bigger so you guys can see it. Feel free to tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast. So Azure Active Directory Test App. So we're going to look for Active Directory, or Azure Active Directory Test App. And then we found the DLL. We hit add. Okay. And then Azure Active Directory Test App.
So you just added something to the reference.
Yes. All right. So many features, so many things you can do. I'm not going to be able to cover them all, but I will encourage you guys to kind of just play around. You're not going to be able to break anything. So let's go ahead and jump to the NuGet Package Manager. So if you go to Tools and then you go to NuGet Package Manager, Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. So this will show you the ones that you're already using. It's going to show you any updates for the ones that you're using, and it's going to give you. Sometimes you might have a project that you're referencing a bunch of different packages, and Visual Studio will try to let you know that, hey, you can consolidate some of these, so you don't have so many references. Because these NuGet packages are essentially just DLLs that people are versioning and putting out into the package library that's on the web. You can go to NuGet, I think it's nuget.org, and see this. And you can see all the ones that are available. And so some of these you will see actually have a dependency, not that one. Let's see here, Microsoft.NET Compiler. Let's find a good one here. Come on. There we go. So, Newtonsoft JSON. You'll see, let's scroll really fast here. So it shows you all the information about the package, and then any dependencies. And what this is going to do is when you say you want to add this to your project, it's going to add all these other things to your project as well. So that's where it kind of where I was kind of heading with the consolidate is that it might give you suggestions saying you don't need this anymore because it's being referenced from this package that you have. So browsing, this is literally going out to NuGet.org here. And you can see the ones that are most popular. You can see the ones that are in pre-release. You can search for what you want. A common one that's used often is this is AutoMapper. High level, what AutoMapper does is it takes one entity and then maps it to another entity seamlessly. It does it with very little code, as long as the property names match up and etc. But they do provide you with the ability to make it a little more advanced. Okay, so any questions about this? I don't know if I really did a good job at describing what this is and the purpose of it.
So just to help me kind of summarize.
Yeah.
Basically, within Visual Studio, when you have a reference, and you can place several different projects under that reference, and they can all refer to each other while you're developing. You also have kind of like a package manager.
Yes.
So you can grab different packages and include it into your project, or I'm sorry, the reference that you have.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'll just show you guys actually how it works here. So I'll click on AutoMapper, choose the application I want. I'm going to choose Web Application 3. And you have the ability to select a specific version if you like. But you hit Install. Down here, it's doing a bunch of different stuff. It just kind of it's kind of like a log that's telling you what's going on. Now, if we go look at here in the references for that project that I just selected, AutoMapper, it's there.
Okay, and can it be a global package throughout the entire reference, or you have to select the different projects?
You have to select for whichever project you want. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, if you guys start working on .NET, you guys will utilize this quite often. I mean, there's literally no way to get around it at this point, since it's pretty well ingrained in .NET and Visual Studio and stuff, for good reason. Yeah.
So I work for a company. We have our custom-built CRM. It integrates with the ERP systems, and so essentially we kind of are really cautious about using external files and sources and whatnot.
Yeah, makes sense.
Do you have any concerns with that and using these packages? You can share?
Not really, because that has never been a concern, because you have full control on whether you update them or not.
Gotcha.
So they can make as many changes. You could be like 10 versions behind, and you wouldn't have to update if you don't want to. Obviously there's going to be a fine silver lining that you got to kind of look into the package and make sure it's not like sending some data that you guys don't want to be sent some foreign place. But the likelihood of you finding something like that is very, very low. I mean, it's a very strong community that people make sure they don't do stuff like that maliciously.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, let's see what else I wanted to show you guys. Extensions and updates. Okay, so extensions and updates here. I'll close this out. Tools. And then right under NuGet package manager, you have extensions and updates. Go ahead, click that if you guys are following along. It's just like this is exactly what it sounds like. You're adding extensions to your Visual Studio, and this is also another area for you to go check to see if there's any updates. Let's just go back to installed. So yeah, you have your installed. You want to search online. Are there any updates? And let's see here. Let's point out one that is a good one for you guys to see that I have installed. So NuGet Package Manager is an extension that's added to Visual Studio, but when you download Visual Studio, it's there as well. ReSharper, I love this. If you guys have ever heard of ReSharper by JetBrains, it really helps you with your development, refactoring, and all kinds of stuff. It's not free, unfortunately, but it's definitely worth the money, and a lot of times employers will reimburse you. And I'll kind of touch on that a little bit later because I actually haven't installed, and it's going to be kind of hard. I need to be cautious on what I say because I might say something that you guys won't have on Visual Studio because I have ReSharper installed. Oh yeah, I'm a stickler on grammar and things, and I installed this extension called Visual Studio Spell Checker, and it'll literally just give you like the red squiggly lines from the stuff you misspell and gives you options. So it's really cool. You guys, like this will show you the most popular ones out there, and kind of browse through them. There's thousands of them, and you might find one that's really helpful. Yeah, that's web compiler. That's a good one if you guys are familiar with Sass or less. From a front-end perspective, it does the compiling for you. Yeah, any questions about extensions and updates? Not really much to talk about in that, I guess. All right, options. I'll show you guys the options. So under tools and all the way at the bottom, options. As you see here, let me go back. You see these line numbers here. That's not on by default. I love that it's there to see it. So to turn it on, you would literally just go to options, and then there's a lot of stuff in here. It's easy to get lost, but I would encourage you guys to kind of just, it'd take you about half hour or so, but look at all the options in here. You might find some stuff in there that might be helpful for you guys to turn on, turn off, etc. Or just be knowledgeable or aware of what you can do. Text editor. So under text editor, in general, that's not where that's at. There we go. So that's good. Let's just go to C#. So this is broken down by all the different languages that's supported by .NET, and the editor, and the text editor is this back here. So if we just go to C# in general, you'll see a line number. So if I turn that off, it goes away. But again, it is off by default, and I love it. But sometimes you'll see code that's like all the way off the screen, and you got to scroll left and right. You can turn word wrapping on. What else is there? You guys all familiar with source control? I didn't put that as a prerequisite of anything, but you can. There's different plugins you can add to Visual Studio depending on the source control you use. Yeah, again, I just encourage you guys to just look through this and check out all the features and things you can turn on and turn off, and etc. All right, so I've already touched on Solution Explorer a little bit, but I can show you some more stuff. That's pretty neat. So there's these tools up here that you see. Let's see here. So you can, where's the collapse button? That's very useful. I think this is new in Visual Studio 2013. Could be wrong. But it's nice, especially if you're working on a project that has 30-something projects in it. You're just like, I don't know where the heck I need to be. I just collapse everything, and then you can navigate exactly where you need to go. Everything in here has a property. There's properties for everything. So there's properties for the solution. You'll see there's two ways to get to it here. If you have whatever you have selected, you can click on properties. That's going to take you to that properties. This is kind of an oddball situation here because there's two different properties for a solution, or for a project. So you have your set of projects or your properties over here as well. To be honest, I don't know how to explain to you guys the difference, but sometimes you'll have to make changes here. I'll come back to this. Let's just go content controllers. So yeah, and you see properties here, and the properties for like a class or any other file that's aside from a project. You have all these options. Your build action, and essentially this is telling the compiler what to do with this file or what have you, whenever it's building. So in this case, it's going to compile it into your IL essentially. I'm not going to go over all these different options because, quite frankly, you rarely ever have to change this. What's that? Oh yeah, I can show you guys a startup property. That's a good one. So let's say I want to actually see how this is highlighted. This means that this is going to be your startup project. So when I hit F5, which I'll get to hotkeys here in a minute, or this play button up here, that means that this project's going to run only. But let's say I want to change it to Web Application 1. All I have to do is go to, so I right-clicked so you guys can know what I did, on the project, and then you can say set a startup project. See how it changed. But let's say that we have more than one project we want to run at one time, because you're working on a project that has 30 projects, and there's a service layer, there's a web layer. But what you can do is you can right-click with the solution level, and this gives you options here. And if you go all the way down to set startup projects, you have a few options here. Whatever you can set it to whatever I'm currently selecting at the moment, whatever single project, or you want to do multiple projects. Say, I want to run this web application, and I want to run this application without debugging. And we'll touch on that too. But the main difference is, I'm sure you're all familiar with what debugging means, maybe. Okay, cool. But you can start a project and be able to step through your code, or you can start a project and just run your code. Okay, all right. Yeah, so what else can we do here? There's a lot of features. Right-clicking gives you so many different features. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming, but if you just kind of focus on what you're looking for, and or just look at all the items, it's not as daunting. So we can exclude stuff from projects. So if I exclude this, it goes away. But like, oh, where'd it go? I want to re-add it. So you can come up here and click on Show All Files, and then see how it looks like a ghost file. You can right-click it again, and then Include in Project. So it's back in there. Solution Explorer. So let's go to Account Controller. So I'll show you guys a little bit about the editor. So if you do Control F or Command F if you're using a Mac, when you are in a file, it gives you this quick find, and it'll focus on the text box for what you're looking for. So I want to find account. It goes through and highlights them all for you, and you can cycle through them like this, or you can look here on the right, and see all the different areas that are orange in this case, and you can kind of just scroll through it if you like. Let's say I don't know which classes I'm looking for this certain thing. You can do a Control-Shift F or Command-Shift F, and then it brings you up another Find and Replace menu, where you can say I want to find account and other areas too, and then you can say I want to look in your entire solution or current project that you're currently in. Find all, and then it brings up a window at the bottom with all your find results. Then if you say, oh, this is the one I want, double click it, takes you straight there. So many features, guys. What's that? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. That's definitely everything I'm showing you is built in so far, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't ReSharper that was doing that. What else can we have? So let's show you guys some cool features within code. If you just go into a class file, in this case it's .cs. Show you guys what IntelliSense looks like. So IntelliSense is this awesome feature that shows you predictions of what you're trying to type, kind of like an autocomplete. So there's things like snippets. PROP is a snippet, and then you hit tab, and then this is building a shorthand property. I can type it, string. We'll get into the syntax, and then you hit tab again, tab twice, and then you can say this is a property. Hit enter, bam, you just created that super quick. Another nice one that I use a lot, CTOR for constructor, tab, bam. So there's some cool features in here that allows you to do some quick coding. Let's say here, so let's say I don't know what I'm looking for, but I want to look at my IntelliSense. If you hit Control space, gives you all the different options that you can have at the moment in your current context. I am not in a good spot to do that. Give me a second here. So let's go down to an actual method here. So this gives you a lot more options. The stuff that is the stuff that's bolded is stuff that's local to this class in this case. Stuff that's not is either something you're inheriting in this class, or something that's globally available within your project. What else to show you guys here? I put some notes here. Snippets, breakpoints. Am I making you guys dizzy yet? Okay, so yeah, we'll get to debugging, but I just want to show you guys this now. Is that this little bar over here allows you to put breakpoints for when you're debugging. So once your code's executing and your thread hits this spot, it's going to stop. But you can also add conditions by right-clicking the breakpoint and then adding a condition. And this is something new I have not played around with much, but there's this actions that says, well, once this is hit, I don't really want to stop there, but I want to log something. I want to spit it out to like the console or something like that. Which is I haven't used it yet, but it seems like a pretty cool feature. Yeah. And this has IntelliSense too, I believe, if I remember right. Ah, shoot. Yeah, say return URL equals, yeah. Cool. What else can I show you guys? I think you guys, does anybody have any questions, or maybe there's something that you usually do with what you guys are doing for a living that you want to know if you can do in Visual Studio? Go ahead.
I know for Adam, it'll show you which files have been changed since your most recent Git commit.
Yes. Yes, so if you have, so Visual Studio will recognize if you're using Git, opening a project in Git, and then down here, this is actually good, where there's this Team Explorer. So if I had one of these open, there would be a list of stuff in here to show you that what has changed. I can show you guys real quick, honestly. I'll just close this solution. And then I'm just going to open up a project that I'm working on at work. Actually, I'm not a big fan of the built-in Git and within Visual Studio, but someone new to Visual Studio might like it, so I would definitely encourage you guys to use it. I'm just partial to SourceTree, if you guys have ever used that or heard of that. There we go. So, yeah, you see the changes. Yeah, it's fully featured built-in plugin for Git. Let's see here. Yeah, that's really straightforward. But it's this Team Explorer option down here. This will work for Git. This will work for SVN if you have a plugin. This will work for Visual Studio Team Services, or Visual Studio Team Services, if you guys use that. Show you guys some hotkeys real quick. So I labeled this Code Like a Pro with these hotkeys, and then this one is hotkeys, the difference between a professional and an amateur. Really, I mean, we're all in IT. You know, hotkeys can help you speed up your development and things like that. So it's a good thing to know. Control plus minus, Control Tab, Control D. So I'll show you guys all this. So as we're going through the application, I'm making changes. Let's see here. No need to follow along on this. Just kind of watch what I'm doing here. So I just went to random files. I'm making changes everywhere, but I don't, you see all your open editor items here. I don't remember, it just like fell off and I don't want to have to go find it, but what you can do is you can hold a control and hit the minus key. And that's going to take you back to what you just touched. So it's always tracking where you're at. But let's say I want to go back forward. You hold shift, hit control shift and hit minus and it'll take you forward. So pretty useful. I use that quite often. Control tab, I think that's pretty universal. This goes through all your tabs. This shows you all the stuff that you have open. So I have quite a bit. Control D, this is pretty cool. I started using it more often recently, but Control D will actually duplicate your code. So you can just click on a line, Control D. Yeah, so that's actually really helpful. And then your basic copy, cut, paste commands, it does the exact same thing. So I'm selected on a line. You hit Control C. Say I want to move this over here. Control V will insert it. It literally takes this whole line and then inserts it above the cursor wherever you have it selected. Same thing for Control X. This is a really nice feature to use because it allows you to quickly move stuff or take stuff out. It deletes the line for if you want. Downside is it's in your clipboard, but if you got some code you just want to get rid of really quick. Let's see here. F5, I'll show you this later, but that's just a hotkey to start your project really quick. And then there's also alternatively Shift F5, which will start your project without debugging. Control K, Control C. This will quickly comment for you, and it works for everything you have highlighted as well. F12, go to definition. This is great. Hit F12, it goes to that type for you. And then let's say, I don't know what an IEnumerable is. If you click on F1, it's going to open up. You might have to set this up. It's been a while. I've had this set up for a while. Maybe it's default, but F1 will take you to the help definition on MSDN site so you can better understand it. All right. All right. Any questions before we move on? That was kind of a lot. And took longer than I anticipated. No questions? Okay, so we're gonna move on to hopefully some less dry stuff. Doing my best to keep you guys perked up. I'm gonna show you guys C# syntax because that's the most widely used in the industry. There is a lot to show you. I'm probably gonna skim through a lot of this, but I will be sharing everything that I'm showing you guys today for your guys' reference. I have created a project for that literally goes through all these that I have listed here: strings, integers, dates, what have you, all your basics. Oops. Make it bigger so you guys can see it. There we go. So I will share that project with you guys. I actually put it up in GitHub recently. But again, I'll send out an email probably today with more information so you guys can see it yourself.
Chris, what's your GitHub?
Steele 86, I believe. I have them. Actually, you know what? I have it open. Yes. So if you guys are using Git actively, and you guys can pull this down. Or actually, you can download it and open it up if you like to as we go through this. All right. So exit. Where did that go? There it is. Okay. So in the show. Then I'm going to open up Visual Studio again. Maybe. Okay, so I'm going to close this project. Oh, I just opened the same one again. Oops, project solutions. Okay, so what I've created for you guys is a console application. There's a lot of good information in here. Why is my line? I need to turn my line numbers back on. Forgot to turn this back on. Okay, so I've added hopefully 600 plus lines of code that'll be helpful for you guys. Commented. This is a runnable console application. So let's just dive right into it. So strings. This is how you create a string. It's really straightforward. The left side of your variable, so would be considered a variable. You can either use the data type that you're creating an instance of or instantiating, or you can use this syntax called a var. And var, what that is just a shorthand way of identifying a variable, and it can be any type. It's determined at runtime, so it has to be a determinable type. You can set strings to empty. You guys all familiar with the difference between null, empty is, so this would literally be a string with nothing in it. Null would be, since string is a reference type, that would mean it's null. There's nothing there. So nulls are bad in code usually. They're going to cause null reference exceptions. So to get around that, there's some cool tools that .NET provide. This function here called string.isNull or whitespace. It's something that I frequently use for strings. There are other functions you can use, null or empty, so that's less likely to be used, but null or white space is going to cover whether your string is null, whether it contains all white space, it's just a bunch of spaces in it, or if it is empty. So very straightforward on adding values to your string. You literally just quote, put whatever you want, and it creates a new instance. Strings have characters. You can determine how big your string is by using the length property off of it. The length property. What else here? Concatenation. Something you'll definitely be doing. There's many different ways to do concatenation for some reason. One is to literally use the plus sign to concatenate. I think that's something you can do in other languages too.
For the string property, is that something that'll show up on Intellects?
Yep, I can show you guys that.
Dot.
Yeah, no problem. So one thing that you can do is, let's just do one here. So I'm going to type in empty string. IntelliSense is going to pop up for you guys. It's really awesome. You hit tab if it's the first one selected, or I can go, oops. If it was like one, you can use up and down, then hit enter. And then once you hit the period, it's going to give you whatever options you can do off of that. So in this case, you'll see length is one of them. And then here on the far right on the IntelliSense, it's going to tell you what that return type is. So that's very helpful if you're trying to figure out what that function does. Go ahead.
So when you create a variable where it can basically store any type or any data type, is it possible so you can change the data type throughout the entire program? If you put in a
Sometimes.
variable, sometimes.
So yeah, it's a strongly typed language. There's ways to do that, but it usually hinders performance. So it's kind of frowned upon. You know, you'll usually be using strongly types, but there are implicit casting and there is explicit casting as well. So you can transform a string into an integer if you like, or an integer into a string. But those are more common reasons. But does that kind of answer your question?
When would you use something that's strongly typed, like string, and then the variable name, and then when would you use a more like a variable that can have different types of or different data types?
So I don't think I'm completely following what you're asking.
So you mentioned that you had a string, right? It's a string variable. That's how it's declared.
Mm-hmm.
Then you also have a variable where it can basically have.
Oh, okay. I
Any
see.
type
I
of
see what you're
data
saying.
type.
You're talking about this var keyword.
Right. So when would be the instance where you would use that compared
Yeah.
to strongly typing your variable to like a string or an integer?
That is a
or
very
an
good
object?
question, and I'm glad you brought that up because this is something that comes up when you're programming in .NET quite often is how or when you should use var. So the general rule of thumb from my what I believe, what a lot of people believe is that if you don't know what the type is going to be, you strongly type it. So you want to really code for readability. You want to make sure that you don't want another programmer looking at your code and trying to figure out what you're doing. So the general rule of thumb is like, so I know this is a string, so I can use var. But let's say I'm going to jump around. Bear with me though. Let's say. So we're calling this method this method select. We don't know what that's returning just by looking at it. So it's usually good practice to don't pay attention to what I'm about to do because that's a resharper. But now you know what that is by looking at it. You don't have to hover over this because hovering over it will tell you what it returns as well. Right there, enumerable string. But if this was var, then it's not as clear as what this variable is. Is that kind of what you're looking for? Like,
Yeah, it basically clearly defines what that variable is going to, whatever's that variable, what's going to return the data type. Now, and this is probably jumping ahead some. I know in JavaScript you have closure. Is it the same within C# where you put a function within the variable? Will it basically create its own separate environment in there, or is it just
a function within a variable, so you could call that function as like a method, is essentially what you're saying. Yeah, you could do that in .NET. It's called a delegate. I wasn't really going to be covering that. But there's also lambda expressions where it's just like an anonymous method. We will cover that a little bit. Yeah, that does exist in .NET. Yeah. No, it's okay. It's okay. Let's see, string. So concatenation, back to that. Plus allows you to do it. Problem with that is that every time you add another string, you're adding a new instance of a string, and then you're literally concatenating it. You're literally taking all, like you say, you got 50 different strings with a plus. You created 50 different instances of a string, and then you're combining it into a new instance. So a better approach to do that instead is to use string.format. And the reason, just to let you guys know, the reason that this is grayed out and underline, et cetera, resharpers, like, hey, you can do something, you can do this better, you can do this differently. It's not the recommended approach anymore. But it is still a valid approach in my opinion. String.format, you literally add these placeholders and they're indexed. So this would be the first index, and then this would be the second. And then after string.format is a function, if we look at it here, it says the format and then your object args. So object is the base class that everything inherits from is an object, which is why that's that. Another thing, just trying not to confuse you guys, is that everything within .NET has a toString. I think that's a pretty common thing in most languages, that you can do a toString on anything that any variables that you have. So that's kind of what's happening behind the scenes with this string.format. But after this comma, after you've added your placeholders, then that is where these args come into play, and I can do concat value again if I wanted to. So this will cry at you if you see how it's like underlined. Let's see if I can get that to pop up. Existing argument in format string. So it's basically saying that you've declared 2 placeholders within your string, but there's only one. So the most recent approach in C#6, that's what people are on right now, is this string interpolation approach. And essentially all you do, it's even quicker than doing string.format, is that you add a $, your quote, and then inline within your string you can reference a variable. And this is really awesome. I'm glad that this is available. But yeah, you can do anything you want in here, any variable. You'll see that I'll be using this a lot through this demonstration, but it's very handy. Basic functions, you can do a 2 upper on your strings, 2 lower. Then you got your basic trims, trim start, trim end, trim. Start would be the beginning of it, the end would be the end of it, and that's literally just trimming white space. But trim is all encompassing, it does both sides.
That doesn't create a whole new instance.
Yes, that does. So these, yeah, that's a good point, and it is creating a new instance. It's you're not manipulating the existing string. You got your basic substring. It creates a new instance. And then you have your what they call verbatim string literals, and you identify that with an @ symbol and then your quote. And what that allows you to do is to add things like things that you'd have to escape. So the backslash is something that is used within strings to identify certain things, like you want to create a line return, what have you. But if I was to do that without the literal sign here, I would have to do a double whack to make that show as 1 when it displays. Another thing that this allows me to do is add these spaces here, or these line returns. Otherwise, like if I tried that here, see, resharper's adding that, but it puts that plus sign. I mean, this would not work. Let's just remove that. So it's broken. Characters, not so much a string, but I wanted to show that to you guys, and that's you'd create that with just a single tick around what you're typing. Any questions about strings? All right, cool. Yeah.
So I see it says console.writeLine. Could you show the console?
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's do it. So this doesn't go like too far ahead. Let's just do this. Control K, Control C. See how useful that was? All right. So you guys, I guess I should point this out. In a console, you can change the background color of it. In order to change the whole background, you have to clear the console after changing the color, and then you can set a title for the top of it. And I created some helper functions within here. I'll show you that here in a second, but let's just go ahead and run that. wanted to make it look like Buckeye colors. So yeah, this is the console. See how it has the title, the background's gray, we got red text. First let's check out some strings. And this could use some love. I may or may not go through and make it a little more legible or readable, but I wanted to get this out there for you guys to at least see. It's not so much to be able to run it in the console as it is to reference it from the code perspective. So yeah, this is what console write line does. Write line, console.write line, write a whole line, and then the next time you do it, it'll be on the next line. But there's also the concept of console.write, and that's going to let you write in line within that same line. See how this literal is formatted? Because I put the line returns in there, it preserves those line returns. All right. Demo strings, value types. So let's jump into value types. Many different types of value types. How many more times can I say types? So let's look at numerics, numerical values. So you have several of them. You have a short, which is a 16-bit number. You have an int, which is a 32-bit number. You have a long, which is a 64-bit number. A float, which is your 32-bit 7-digit precision number that you would use for, is most commonly used for graphics, for faster processing. You have double, which is your 64-bit 15 to 16 precision number. The precision part is the like after the decimal point, in case anybody's wondering. And then you have your decimal, which is rarely used unless you write a financial application, but that allows you to get precise as far as down to 28 to 29 digits. So these again are value types, and they're not reference types. So let's see here. So yeah, kind of the same concept as declaring a string. You say, you know, I could literally do like this instead, like you were pointing out earlier. But this is now going to be an int. So the default for var when you use a number is going to be an int. So if you want to actually use a short, you have to strongly type it. What's good here? There's a constant on all your integer values. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So let's say you do use var, and if you put a number in, it's going to automatically give it the int.
Yes.
Int reference, right? Or is it data type?
It'd just be an int value type. Yes.
Value type.
Mm-hmm.
Can the value type change, or is that cause?
You can do casting, but that's just going to be another value type. I'll show you some casting here as well. So yeah, these constants. So these are sometimes nice to use if you're writing conditions and stuff like that to figure out, or if you just want to know what the max value is. But there's also like a min value as well. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be some negative number that's opposite of max value. But again, you can also hit F1 on that to see the documentation on MSDN. And from my experience, MSDN's documentation is a lot better than most programming languages documentation. So that's good. That's a good thing. So 32-bit. Okay, so there's implicit conversions from that can happen, that you can do between integer values, I guess. So the general rule is that I put this in order of the largest. So the general rule is that a short can become an int can become a long, et cetera, but an int cannot be a short. You could try to cast it, but you could run into an issue where it would throw an exception. Decimal is kind of its own beast because it's so large. It's 128 bits. But you cannot do a double implicit conversion to a decimal. You literally have to use this static class called convert to decimal and then pass in the number. But there's overrides for this, overloads, that you can pass in many different other things that you want to convert to decimal. But this convert is handy. You guys may run into times where you would need to use it as well, but it allows you to do conversion of all kinds of all the different types. So integers, you can also add all the different types together aside from decimal. Decimals, again, a different piece. You have to do it a different way. You have to do conversions. But so this is the 16-bit number, which is a short. I'm adding it to the 32-bit number, which is the int, the long, the floating, and so when you do that, the result of that is going to be the largest integer type that you're using, integer value type. So in this case, floating number is the largest. So the result of us adding all this together is going to be a float. Does that make sense? I did it again for double. I added the double at the end. Double's the largest one. So the result of this, adding this together, is a double.
So you can have like maybe like an integer and basically you can have a double, but it could be, I don't know, it could have a side, it could no, myself. Ultimately the size is going to be a double if you added like a bunch of ints and shorts.
You're saying like if I had like 15 ints, would it convert to a double?
No.
Oh.
It's all dependent on who you want to return back. If it's a double or an int or I didn't catch all of them.
You got float, double, decimal, int, short, long. Yeah, so it's always going to take the highest because the engine really needs to in order for it to work properly, because none of these, like the int, the short, and the long, they don't have precision. They're whole numbers, whereas floating number has seven-digit precision. So.
Have you ever ran into issues with that where you would have performance issues because it's basically choosing the largest value type?
Not really. I've not worked on applications where there's a lot of math going on, unfortunately. Someday, maybe.
I have
Yeah.
so on line 146 or 147, where it says float or double, could you replace that with var and it would automatically figure out that it's going to be what it's going to be?
Yep.
Like that. Okay, so that's valid.
Yep, it's valid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question. If you're adding together like two really large ints, and you're expecting the result to be an int, and you strictly code it like Steele is on line number 146. So like if you're expecting an int result, but it's too big, what you say, it's 16 bits, right, for an int?
32.
32 bits for an int.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty big number, but if you're expecting an int, but the number ends up being too big for it to be an int, is that just going to cause an error?
So yeah, you'll get like a compile time error. I think I said earlier that var's runtime, it's figured out runtime, but it's actually figured out before that. It's figured out. It tells you that you wrote something bad or faulty while you're coding. So, and sometimes it'll come up when you're actually compiling instead. So you would not be able to put that into like a production environment or anything like that. Cool.
If you had like two counters that then added together, so there would be a runtime check for that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there would be
Compile
runtime.
time. Yep, compile time. Yep. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Would it just overflow silently, or would it error?
It'll blow up. If it's too large, it'll blow up. I think it's like a overflow exception or something like that.
What would be the overhead in just making everything a double number?
I don't know, to be honest. I couldn't tell you. Probably not as bad as a decimal, because decimal's so much larger. Is that, I can look into that tonight if you sure? Okay, all right, yeah.
Make everything a double number just to...
Usually you use floats, unless, floats or doubles. Project that I'm working on, I'm using floats, because I don't need that extra precision. I only need 2. A float gives you 7, you know, and I'm not like, doing any type of currency or real numbers or anything like that. So it's just that's what I need. So
Comparison gets tricky too.
what's that?
Comparison gets tricky.
Yes, yes.
I would say ints are probably good, definitely good for like if you're gonna have a counter, you know, and it's not gonna be like a huge number, so
Yeah,
that
there's
might be a good.
yeah, there's a reason why ints are the default whenever you set your if you like use a var. But I guess I kind of glossed over this, is that you can actually set a float, like you can identify this as a float by using this F key. Well, it says it's a single. A single is a float. It's just it's represented two different ways. Yeah, and then the same thing goes for decimal. You have the M to identify that. So cool. Boolean values, not a lot to show here. Same thing, var. This would say this, since on the right side we're using true. True is a bool. It's gonna know that it is a bool. But bool is the keyword for it. I'm true. I'm false. You can parse. You can also parse strings into bools. It'll accept true or true or false in whatever casing that you would like. It does not allow you to do like 0 and 1 for parsing, or yes or no. That's just, you would have to write custom code for that. Pretty straightforward. Enum values, enumeration values. So these are kind of cool. I use these a lot. There's definitely a use case for them, but let's go ahead and look at the body style enum here. So usually if you have an enum, you're going to create it in its own file in this case, and you can do that without actually having a class. So public enum body style, and then it's usually good practice to always have a none value, or one that it means it's not set, because the default is always going to be the first one. So you can run into issues if you're not checking for that. So yeah, I just mentioned the default value for enums. You can cast an enum to, I should have pointed this out. So enum has a string value and it has an integer value, and you can cast them to either or. So if I do bodystyle.van, that's going to give me the string value of it. But if I cast the body style to an int and then do a toString on that, then that's going to show you the string representation of the enum. There's a good practice that would be good for you guys to follow, is that you can make an enum anything. So notice this is setting 100 to body style, but there was no 100 here. That works. So when you do a toString on that, it's going to show the integer value, because it doesn't know how to resolve it. It's not an actual body style. So usually if you're passing this in as a parameter on a public or protected operation or function, you're going to want to do like an enum is defined. And this would basically spit out a bool value saying that, yeah, this is a valid body style in this case. Cool. All right. Moving along to dates. So I think like most languages, there's a lot of dates, a lot of functionality around dates. Default date is going to be your datetime.min is what they call it. I could show that to you guys, but I think if I remember right off the top of my head, it's 110001. Like, I don't know. I'll just run it here in a second to show you guys what it is. But then you can say, give me today, now, what is the time right now? You can do datetime.now, UTC now. There's you can do the offset. You can create a new date, pass it in like a year, date, time, and all that stuff. And there's many different constructors you can use here. If you just want to do a year, month, day, you can do that, and then it'll default to 12 o'clock as your time, because this is a date time. So when you use this, you are always going to get both, unless you do something like to short date string. Short date string is going to give you guys the actual date instead of the time. Then you can break it down into all the different pieces: year, month, day, day of week, hour, minute, second, millisecond, etc. And then there's a whole MSDN site that shows you all the different formatters you can do for a date. But when you do .toString, you can pass in a formatter for your date, and it'll spit it out exactly how you want it. And then you can also add and subtract dates. So, but what that's going to spit back is a time span, and a time span is a duration of time. And then with that time span, you can say, well, how many days is within that duration, or how many hours, or ticks. And let's go down to the smallest pieces. I use time spans often for like configuration. If I need to say, like, the most recent example is this app that we're working on, mobile app for iPhones and Androids. You can log your food and track your food, and we need the ability to grab frequent foods. And what I did is I added a configurable time span that I am storing as a string, and then it says like how far back should I go for frequent foods? 7 days. So I grab this time span, and then using the created date when I'm querying SQL or querying the database, I could say, give me between these 7 days back from today, essentially. So that's what it allows me to do. So it's kind of a neat thing to have. Let me run this so you guys can see this stuff spitting out. So default date is 11/01/12 a.m. Local UTC, local time, UTC time. This is me creating the date. This is my birthday. You can spit out just today, and what this is going to give you is, it's like I said, it's still going to give you the time portion, but what you really care about is this portion. But then I think I might have glossed over that. Oh no, that's a too short date string. This is what it looks like. And then this is all the components, ticks. This is the specially formatted date that I did. And this is how long ago I was born. 11,000 days ago. 265,000 hours ago. All right. Any questions on dates? I don't know what time is it? 11:37. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
And I might not ever have a use case, but I'm just curious. Can you get the Linux time?
The Linux time, what would that be? Is there another word for that?
I think Linux time is seconds since January 1st, 1970.
Yes, you can do that. Let me see if I can remember how to do that. I've done it before. What's that?
Yeah, I think it's seconds.
Is it called epoch time?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Well before Linux.
I've done it before. Is it from? I don't remember how to do it, to be honest. But there, you can do it. It's supported. Yeah. Cool. All right, so let's move on to conditions, switches, and operators. So these are your various comparison operators. You got your double equal sign for equals, does not equal. This closely resembles JavaScript. Actually, I think it's exactly like what you would see in JavaScript. Oh, by the way, just want to say thank you guys for for doing the surveys, for everybody that did the surveys. That was helpful. Kind of side comment. Let's check these out. So I just created, you can do random values in here by just creating a new class called random and then doing dot next, and then you're passing in what's the max value this random value could be. And then so this is just showing you guys how to use these operators. So if this number ends up being less than 50, we're going to spit out numbers less than 50, or if it's greater than or equal to 50, this is greater than or equal to 50. Doing another random, you could do modular using the percent sign. So this basically, I'm just checking to see if this is an equal number or not. So is this divisible by 2, and is there a 0 remainder? That's what this is saying. Number divided. That's essentially how you check to see if there's an equal number. There's other use cases you might run into to use modular or modulus that actually help you cut out a lot of code if you use it right. And then here's your conditional operators. You got your and, you got your or, your not. So you can say that something's not something. So the opposite. It's like doing an inverse essentially. And then your XOR. I've never used this before, so I tried to think of a good use case for it, but I did not come up with one, just so you guys know. Okay, so more random numbers. I'll run this so we can see it working here in a second. But there's a number greater than or equal to 0, etc., etc. So another thing you can do is you can add parentheses. Say this. Oh, sorry.
So XOR, say exclusive OR, is that like just between two conditions?
It's
like a grouped
from what I
condition.
understand, it's like bitwise, like true false type things. I couldn't honestly. I'm not very knowledgeable with the XOR. It's kind of, I think it's something that used to be used back in the day or something. I don't know, to be honest. I've never had a use case to use it. I hope I never do. But I can look into that if you want me to look into it and come back with a better answer tomorrow.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm just gonna put it in here. All right. Cool. So yes, what I was saying is that you can group up your conditional statements, and then you can say, then you can throw in your logical statements. So you can kind of break it up into this one big massive thing if you'd like to. Here's an example of does not equal. So in this case, this would spit out to be the numbers between 21 and 30, or 70 through 80, and not greater than 90. And then here's your switch statements. I know some languages like Swift, they allow you to do some pretty cool stuff with your switch statements, but .NET's a little basic. Essentially, you're doing a switch on the number or the value, and then you have your different case statements. Usually, the reason you would use a switch statement over if else is that if you have a bunch, have like 50 conditions or something like that. So you can stack them too, like this here. If the number is 55 or 67, and then you say, well, if they don't mean anything, then this is what you should do. So let's go ahead and run that real quick. Number is greater than or equal to 50. It was 98. Number is must not be equal. Yeah, so we didn't get lucky on that switch statement. The number was 95. It didn't meet any of our random numbers I chose. So, any questions on conditions, switches, and operators aside from XOR? Cool. All right, let's go to arrays, guys. I got a lot on arrays. I'll probably just skip through some of it because some of it's not practical. So there's many different ways to create arrays. I'll just jump to the most recent, shortest, fastest way to do it is to literally allow the Visual Studio to figure out exactly what you're trying to do. So this is going. You can use var and then you can just pass in a type. So these are all strings as part of the array, and this will know that it is a string array. But you can also, strongly type it. And then if you really wanted to, you can define an upper bound. Say this array I'm creating shouldn't be larger than this. And if you go over that, you're going to get an exception. It will not allow you to do that during design time, I guess. See it already. This will give me a compile error. So you can also create multi-dimensional arrays. I've never had to do that in the 7 years I've been developing, but it is supported. So this will create like a 2x3 array. I'm defining there would be 2 elements or 2 arrays within this array. Yeah, and then you can also create jagged arrays. I've never done that as well, but it is supported. And you can do multi-dimensional jagged arrays. So it's getting pretty crazy. All right, so let's say we have actually the interview I had here, this was a while ago, coding prompt that they wanted you to parse this this file and split it up into whatever you want to split it up, but that's supported in .NET so if you have a string like this, and you can split it based off of a character. So notice how this is a single tick. So I'm breaking it up. So this is going to be 1. This is going to be 1 here like that, and 1 like that. So it's creating an array for me. And then you can, for any collection, you can use the string.join function, and you pass in a whatever. So I've just split it into an array, but I'm doing the opposite now. I'm going back the other way. I want to display it now. So what I can do is I can call this join function, pass in a delimiter, and pass in the collection. When I run this, or if I run this, you'll see that, like I was pointing out, that each element or each index will have a space like that, and that's because I identified it as just the comma character. So if I wanted to break it up, if I wanted to remove that extra space, I would do I would pass in an array to the split method. Like if we look at the overloads, you pass in an array, separator. You can do some string split options, which I'm going to show you. So you can say, let's say there is see how there's a comma at the end? This would end up being something, end up being something within your array that you created. So I pass in, I want to split based off of a comma and a space, and I also want to remove empty entries. So that's exactly what you would need in this case for it to look properly. You can retrieve values with the index, using brackets, and then you can also set it using the index. And then the best way to check to see if an array contains values is to first check to see if it's not null, and then to check to length to see if there's more than one value in it. This is giving me a little squiggly because up above, it knows I set this to a value, so it's never going to be null. So it's like, well, what the heck are you doing? So let me run that real quick.
Back to what you said earlier, that's how you get a job at Crown Solutions. Is that the outline of everything?
Well, that was the end of the interview. There was just like a random code prompt, and it was fun. That wasn't the whole thing that I had to do. There was more to it than that, but it just was funny. So go ahead. What's that?
So with the array, basically, it's not like in JavaScript where you could just console.log it, the actual array. And just
Yeah. So earlier I mentioned that everything inherits from object, and there's a toString for everything.
Right.
So I think I show that later in here, but if I did a toString on that without doing the string.join, it's going to say the fully qualified name, and I haven't talked about namespaces yet.
Yeah.
But they would have it would be like namespace dot whatever array. So I think it would be like system.collections.array or something like that. That's what it would spit out.
If you want to get it spit out, it has to come out as a string then.
Yes.
And then basically you have to join based off of what's separating the different
Yes.
elements in the array.
So
Okay.
yeah, that separator is, you define the separator you want to take each element of the array and like put for the separator. So in this case I put pipes. So you can see here. See, this is when I did it with just the comma, and this is when I did it with the comma and the space and removed any empty entries like this back right here. Index value is 1, then I changed it. It's changed to that. It has 6 values. So cool. All right. Let's go down to collections. List. This is going to be something you'll definitely use quite often, is lists. A list allows you to use any type in your list. So I can use value types. See, I'll just show this to you. So this bracket here, or not bracket, but this less than, equal, or less than and greater than sign, in between there is you pass in a type of what this list is going to contain. It can't contain anything else than what you're defining, though. So in this case, I'm creating a list of integers, and you can just doing this will just create an empty list. But let's say I want to create a list and I want to instantiate it with values. You can do that by using brackets. Let's see here. You can also take an array. I'm creating an array here. This is shorthand. Instead of setting it to a variable, this behind the scenes technically is a variable, and it allows you to do functions off of it that you would do with a string, or with a string, not a spring. And you can do a split on that, and then when you create a new list, you can pass in that array, and it'll be pre-populated with that. Let's see. This is how you would add values into a list. Remove based off the actual item. In this case, this is a list of strings, so I am removing this one here when I do this, because this wants you to pass in the item that you're removing from the list itself. So a practical scenario would be I grabbed something from it, and then I say, well, from that value I did some type of interrogation. I don't want this value anymore. I'm going to call list my list.remove and pass that item in, and it will remove it from your list for you. You can also have the ability to insert at a specific index of your list, and you can remove at an index. And then you can remove based off a condition. This is that lambda expression I was talking about earlier. We'll get more into that here in a little bit. You retrieve values just like you did with an array using the bracket for your index. And then this is how you check to see if there is values using the dot count. But if you want to make sure that you write a condition to make sure that the list is usable and will not give you an all reference exception, is you would want to say, does my list, is it not null? And then there's a function you can call. It's called any, and it'll tell you if there's any values in it. If you want to clear everything, there's that. Same thing, the string.join, same concept as what I showed you for arrays. And then there's some extra cool features. This is, we'll talk about link here in a little bit, but you can change all the values or do what you want with each value with this function. And again, I'll show you that here in a couple minutes actually. So any questions about loops? Or not loops, but collections. I did not show dictionary. I just realized I did not put anything in there for dictionaries, but it's pretty straightforward. You got your key and you got your value. Okay.
It's more of a general question. What are some good resources to, I guess, look these up? Especially when we were talking about earlier on, like when we were getting into like any integers and like those breakdowns. I know those are things that, it's great if you have them memorized, but for the average developer, you're probably looking it up. So what are resources that you'd recommend as a .NET developer and or someone just trying to learn?
Okay, so that's a good question. F1, like if there's something in here you're unsure of, you hit F1, it'll take you to the MSD and documentation. That's very helpful. Google is your friend. I just ask Google, or the Oracle, whatever you want to call Google. Then there's actually I put a code reference. It's like a quick reference as part of the resources that's on the slideshow at the end. That literally gives you 2 pages with everything on how you do all the different syntax that I'm showing you right now. So what I'm showing you now is examples, but you got MSDN, you have Google, you have there's that quick reference that I'm providing for you guys. But those are going to be your best resources. Jump on a Slack community like Columbus Web Group and say, hey, how do I do this? And there's somebody's going to help you out usually. Cool. So while I'm looking at this, while this is in front of me, I can show you guys how to do a linking on right this second. Then static identifies that there's only one instance of this. So you can have a function that's static, or you can have a class that's static, and it is instantiated at runtime once, never again, and it stays in memory. And then the next part is your return type. In this case, this is returning a string array, and then your function name. I'll jump down here to another function that I have in here, right heading. So you can also pass in variables, as many variables as you want that's comma separated. Let's see here. But yeah, that's really it in a nutshell from a function perspective. There's not a lot to talk about on functions. I've already shown you guys how to call these functions with some of this, like some of the stuff I've already demoed. Where was I at? Loops. Okay, so onto the loops. So I'm calling this function to get that array that I created. You have your for each loop, you have your for loop, you have your do while, and you have your while loop that you can use. The most common ones are for each and probably for. And I think most languages have these. For each is literally allows you to use a collection and then strongly type the value that it's iterating through, and allows you to do stuff with that the value within that array or collection. So you can do that with arrays, you can do that with collections. You can do that with dictionaries too. You can do that as well. You get your for loop based off of an index. You would declare your index, and you can set the start value. So sometimes I've had times where I wanted to do like array.length here instead, and I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to decrement instead. Can't spew off a reason why I did that back in the day, but you can do that. You have the flexibility to do that. I just use control -sign to get back to exactly where I was at. So that's very helpful. Let's see here. So you have your variable for your index, and then you have your condition to when to stop, and then you have your increment decrement. So you can do that with any collection. So I'm demonstrating an array. I'm going through the whole array using the index and list using the index. And then while loops and do while loops, they're less commonly used, but it's easy to write a loop that will not stop. and it'll keep going, an endless loop, if you don't have a proper condition. Same thing as you'd have to, in this case, you'd have to have an index, and then you have to manually increment it, and then here's your condition. There's many different ways you can do this, since it's all based off a condition. So with a while loop, your condition's at the top, the first thing that is checking, and with a do while loop, your condition's at the bottom. So, cool. Any questions? All right.
Just being conscious of the time. So what's going to be covered tomorrow?
We'll go. Oh wow, time flew by. So tomorrow we will definitely be able to get through the 2 workshops, and most likely deploying. I was hoping to get to the point of you guys getting to the first workshop. I apologize for that, because I had some cool stuff that you guys could do like in between today and tomorrow. But maybe I can, between today and tomorrow, I can incorporate that, what I wanted to have you guys do for. So, yeah, tomorrow we'll do the workshops, we'll go over debugging, and then we will hopefully deploy to Azure, so you guys can see that. So is this a stopping point?
Doesn't have to be, but
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think, what is it, the 2 hours are up already? Okay, yeah, there was just a couple more things I wanted to show you guys. I was going to show you guys Link. Link is something that you will regularly use and will save you so much time as you're programming. And then I was going to show you error handling, but we could probably quickly cover that tomorrow, or you guys could check it out at home.
thank you.
Yeah.